His divine grace, Abhaikya Anavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki, Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki, Premchiko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sati Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Vrindavanam ki, Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Maya Manamaya ki, Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi ki, Shri Radha Manohar ki, Shri Chaitanya Baldev Subhadar ki, Shri Gaura Nitai ki, Shri Gaura Premanande. All glories to the Assembled Buddhas, all glories to the Assembled Buddhas, all glories to the Assembled Buddhas, all glories to Shiva and Sigaranga. So we will be reading from the 8th canto, chapter 16, verse 1 to 5. Executing the Payavrata process of worship. I will recite first the first 4 verses and then verse 5 together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Jisuka vacha evam puteshu nasteshu deva mata titistata ette vishtape daityai payatapya anatavat. Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, when Aditi's sons, the demigods, had thus disappeared from heaven, and the demons occupied their places, Aditi began lamenting, as she had no protector. Text 2. Ekada kasyapastasya ashranam bhagavam magat nirutsavam niranandam samade vyatasyat. After many days, the great powerful sage Kashyapa Muni rose from a trance of meditation and returned home to see the ashram of Aditi, neither jubilant nor festive. Sapatnindina Vardanam Kritasana Parihaha Sabachito Jatanyanam Iham Aha Rodvaha. Or best of the ghosts, when Kashyapa Muni had been properly received and welcomed, he took his seat and then spoke as follows to his wife, Aditi, who was very morose. Apyabhatram navipranam bhatredo kadunakatam na dharmasya na lukasya mityushandan bhaktinam. O most gentle one, I wonder whether anything inauspicious has not taken place in regards to religious principles. The Brahmins or the people in general were subject to the whims of death. Purport: there are prescribed duties for all inhabitants of this material world, especially for the Brahmins, but also for the people in general, who are subject to the whims of death. Kashyapa Muni wondered whether the regulative principles which are meant for the well-being of everyone has been disobeyed. He accordingly continued his inquiries for 7 verses. And text 5 is the first verse of this inquiry. We can repeat 5 together on the board. Very good. Apeva kosalam kinchit.
Apeva kosalam kinchit.
Sehe suvaya medini.
Dehe suvaya medini.
Dharmasya tasya kamasya.
Dharmasya tasya kamasya.
Yatra yoga ayoginam.
Yatra yoga ayoginam.
Apevaksu salam kinchit.
Apeva kosalam kinchit.
Sehe suvaya medini. Dharmasya tasya kamasya.
Dharmasya tasya kamasya.
Yatra yoga ayoginam.
Yatra yoga ayoginam.
Apeva kusalam kinchit.
Apeva kosalam kinchit.
Deshu
Medini.
Dharmasya tasya kamasya.
Dharmasya tasya kamasya. Yatra yoga ayoginam.
Apeva kusalam kinchit.
Apeva kusalam kinchit. Sesuvaya medini. Dharmasya tasya kamasya. Yatra yoga ayoginam.
Apeva kusalam kinchit.
Apeva kusalam kinchit.
Suvaya medini.
Suvaya medini.
Dharmasya kamasya.
Dharmasya tasya kamasya.
Yatra yoga ayoginam.
Apeva kusalam kinchit.
Apeva kosalam kinchit.
Suvaya medini.
Suvaya medini.
Dharmasya tasya kamasya.
Dharmasya tasya kamasya. Yatra yoga ayoginam. But for what translation? Api, I'm wondering. Va,
Either
akosalam,
inauspiciousness,
inauspiciousness, kinchit, some, shehesu, at home, Sheyamedini. Oh, my wife who are attached to household life.
Oh, my wife who are attached to household life.
Dharmasya, of the principles of religion. Arthasya, of the economic condition. Kamasya, of satisfaction of desires,
of satisfaction of desires,
yatra,
yatra,
at home, yoga, the result of meditation,
the result of meditation,
he, indeed, ayogina, even of those who are not transcendentalists.
even of those who are not transcendentalists.
Translation and commentary by Abhayacharya Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. O my wife, who are very much attached to house of life, if the principles of religion, economic development, and satisfaction of the senses are properly followed in house of life, one's activities are as good as those of the transcendentalist. I wonder whether there have been any discrepancies following these principles. Commentary. In this verse, Aditi has been addressed by her husband Kashyapa Muni as Kriya Medini, which means one who is satisfied in awesome life for sense gratification. Generally, those who are in awesome life pursue sense gratification in the field of activities performed for material results. Such Kriyamadis have only one aim in life, sense gratification. Therefore, it is said, a householder's life is based on sense gratification, and therefore the happiness derived from it is very meager. Nonetheless, the Vedic process is so comprehensive that even in householder life, one can adjust his activities according to the regulative principles of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. One's aim should be to achieve liberation, but because one cannot at once give up sense gratification, in the Shastras there are injunctions prescribed how to follow the principles of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, as explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, Dharmasya iya pavargasya nartaritayo kalpate. All occupational engagement are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. Then they should therefore never be performed for material gain. Those who are in household life should not think that religion is meant to improve the process of the householder's sense gratification. Household life is also meant for advancement in spiritual understanding, by which one can ultimately gain liberation from the material clutches. One should remain in household life with the aim of understanding the ultimate goal of life, tattva jnana. Then household life is as good as the life of a yogi. Kashyapa Muni therefore inquired from his wife whether the principles of religion, economic development, and sense gratification were properly followed in terms of the Vedic injunctions. As soon as one deviates from the injunctions of Shastra, the purpose of household life is immediately lost in confusion. Verse again, Apiva kusalam kinchit eshu yamudini dharmasya tasya karamasya yatra yoga iya yogina. O my life, O my wife, who are very much attached to household life, if the principles of religion, economic development, and satisfaction of the senses are properly followed in household life, one's activities are as good as those of a transcendentalist. I wonder whether there have been discrepancies in following these principles. Chitchetanyamanopistam staptam yena bhutale shramrukadamyam dadati svapalantikam Vandeyam Shiyuda Patkam Shigam Vaishnavam Shah Shilpam Jagajatam Saganaragnatam Vitamtam Sajivam Satvaitam Sabdutam Parjana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sankanalita Shivishakam Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandha Jatpate Gopesha Gopka Kantarat Kantanamaste Tapta Kansna Garanki Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwan Sudevi Purnamama Viki Pankar Kautubisha Kripa Sindhave Visha Padnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaurabhaktabhina Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Vistaya Vishmate Bhakti Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pacharani Nirvsis Sringavadi Paskachaya Desatarani Srila Prabhupada. So this is this chapter 16 that first a little recap of what went before. So we have got Parliament entered with the demons, the heavenly planets. But those with bad qualities, they cannot enter the heavenly planets. So what is interesting here, it's obviously it's difficult to get there, but the demons, they went to heaven. So what is the consciousness of the temples like? It's not easy to understand for us. Because we tend to think if we see Indra doing something, for example, if I would be doing the same thing if I would perform the same act, my consciousness would be in a specific way similar to Indra's. But when we act, it's completely different. That Indra's acts are not impelled by the lower modes of nature. That although it may appear that the demigods have qualities similarly to ours, very fallen beings, and to the inhabitants of Kali Yuga, but it's quite different. They do not have the same qualities. We say that it's not like my consciousness. To give a positive description of what their consciousness is very difficult. It's extremely subtle. How did the heavenly planets look like? We have heard about fruits, branches of tree overloaded with fruits, expert musicians, nice-smelling fragrances everywhere, everything auspicious, subtle goodness, auspicious, but the devotees are not interested in going there. And then there's higher planets, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, still more subtle. And that is the key in understanding these places, having this subtle consciousness. The more subtle one's consciousness is, the more one can enjoy on a subtle level. And although you can't prove it on one level, but the people who really like to sit next to speakers during the heavy metal rock concerts, they get a certain type of pleasure out of that. Otherwise, they wouldn't do that. Or at the other side, the people that get pleasure from very fine symphonic orchestra, like Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Bach. The people who get pleasure from that, one gets pleasure of music, and the other gets also pleasure of music, but it's different. That this rock music is like a washing machine. But this sophisticated symphonic orchestra that's very subtle, is all these tunes and how it fits together. If one has attraction for that, it's different, but one cannot understand the other. And those who are attracted to this rock music, they don't like this symphonic. Well, usually. So when we're sitting next to the speaker at the rock concert, he will say that I'm enjoying so much Sashimi, but actually it's not. Because gross compared to subtle. One has to study very hard, and it helps to experience the subtleties in music. Heavy metal music is easy to enjoy. Just place yourself in it and that's it. But so the heavenly plans are subtle and they are gross compared, but they are still gross compared to Jana Loka, Tapaloka, Brahma Loka. Like they have different bodies also, but on the heavenly planets they have subtle bodies, but but on higher planets, even higher planets like Satya Loka, there Brahma had as a man as a body made of intelligence. Move fine. That's interesting. Yeah. So gross and subtle. But on the material level, spiritual and transcendental is by definition beyond the subtle. The transcendental, the spiritual is beyond. And the transcendental plane is composed of complete different substance altogether. There are no modes of material nature, no goodness, no passion, no ignorance, neither have heavy metal music, no Stravinsky, none of that at all. But something most wonderful, it's Krishna's potency. It's Satchitananda Vigra. So Bali had taken over the heavenly planets. So why did he do it? By the potency of his spiritual master. He did it by the potency of his spiritual master. Because to be situated on the subtle plane, it takes an incredible amount of piety. To do something gross requires impiety. You do not need very much. Just be impious and you can enjoy anything in the mode of ignorance. It is subtlety that takes piety. Bali Maharaj did not have the requisite piety to be the king of heaven, but Indra, he had that. So by the next Manvantar, Bali has earned his piety by them, and then he will become Indra. So by the material pious blessings of Sukracharya, Bali conquered the heavenly planets. He became so powerful that it wasn't by his own piety. It was by the piety of Sukracharya. So then what happened? So we are going to hear about the heavenly planets with Bali in charge. From the end of chapter 15, text 30 and 35, 36, after he conquered the heavenly planets by the power of Sukracharya, he will perform 100 Asvamedha Sakya. And to gain entrance to heaven, you need piety. And to maintain your position in heaven, you need still more piety. So maintenance is much more difficult than creation. Creation is all fun, it's all passion. But to maintain it, oh goodness, it's boring. So you have to clean it and make sure all the pieces are oiled. We cannot experience any of the great creative ecstasies. Maintenance takes so much piety. To maintain his position on the advice of Sukracharya, knowing that he did not have the piety, Indra, as he took over the heavenly planets by force, he began his Asvamedha sacrifices to increase his piety. So now we understand why. So if we want to become the king of heaven or go to heaven and enjoy the fragrances that we have to increase, then we have to increase our piety. So, but to Goloka Vrindavan, We need to increase our love for Krishna to the degree that there is nothing else. So that there is nothing else than devotion in our consciousness. We all want to Goloka Vrindavan, right? And are we willing to pay the price? That's the point. Or do we want to keep a corner of our consciousness for me? Do we want to do instead of having Krishna? Do we want to do something else instead of having Krishna in the center? Are we willing to pay the price? Are we able to pay the price? Is something different. One must be very pure and sincere. Now that was the recap. Now we have this chapter, the verses we read. So Aditi lost what she thought to be the most important thing. Their sons were ruling the heavenly planets. So she began to lament. So who is Aditi's husband? Kashyapa Muni. Before in the third canto, we read that Diti, this is Diti, not Aditi, Diti was serving her husband to get a child, right? She was pleasing him for her own purposes, a type of business dealing. The duplicitous. She wanted to have a child immediately. And the result was horrible. Yes. The result was that union was Yaksha and Yakasipu. And in the same canto we have Kardamamuni and Devahuti. And Devahuti tried to please her husband. And what was the result of their union? It was Kapila Muni, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's two opposite results, right? A demon and the Lord. So the wives were trying to please their husband, and they pleased their husbands, but the results were completely different because of their mentality, duplicity and simplicity of heart. And then at the end of the sixth canto, again, Diti tried to please Kashyapa Muni. Again, Diti was very, very angry. Her beloved Asuric children, the Daityas, two of them had been killed, and she didn't blame Vishnu, but she blamed Indra. She wanted to kill Indra. So, but Kashyapa Muni, having been fooled one time after she pleased him, that he had a different mood, and he realized that he needed to give her a benediction that's going to purify her. So what he did was engaging her in the Lord's worship to such a degree that she gave up the enmity with Vishnu, and the Maruts were born. So this is a wonderful pastime, as Diti became completely purified by that circumstance, by the process of devotional service. And Indra was serving her, and because she was performing devotional service, Indra was also purified. As a result, the Maruts were not demons, but they were made demigods. So that's the third instance. And here we have the fourth one. Aditi is lamenting. So in verse 3 and 4, we heard the Kashyapa Muni because Kashyapa Muni was meditating, and then he came back from his meditation in the ashram, and he observed inauspiciousness. So he inquired about inauspiciousness, what happened? Because it seemed to pervade the ashram. So Kashyapa Muni inquired whether Aditi did something inauspicious while he was enwrapped in trance. Now we have this text 5. Because there was moroseness and unhappiness, it seemed that there must be a fault. That, and then you have this purport here. Srila Prabhupada makes it very clear. Household life is not for sense gratification. You have the three materialistic goals, which we find all prevailing in the Karma Kanda and in Hinduism, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. But a householder, he engages in Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, but for the purpose of purification, that's different. That the aim should be liberation. So it should be followed through regulative principles. Regulative principles means, yes, what is the main regulative principle mentioned in Bhagavad Gita? Do everything as a sacrifice for Vishnu. 5th chapter it said that a yogi acts only for purification of his existence. And then you have the 16th chapter. The first 3 verses describe the divine qualities. Abhaya, Sattva, Samsudir. One must become fearless, but to become fearless, the one must purify one's existence. And that's the point. If you don't do your duty to purify your existence, you engage in Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, you become more polluted. And that's a problem. But Srila Prabhupada said, if one engages properly, according to these regulative principles, then one becomes purified. That means one must understand what real renunciation is. Understanding, not being attached to anything, indifferent, but at the same time knowing everything belongs to Krishna and we use it in Krishna's service. So that's what household life is meant for. It's an ashram for making spiritual advancement. And then Srila Prabhupada said this household life is as good as the life of a yogi. So Kashyapa Muni was concerned that because if one deviates from the principles of religion, then yes, all inauspiciousness will come. So yeah, this will continue for 5 more verses. 5 more verses. Maybe you can discuss tomorrow with text 6, but I will just read these 6 verses that Kashyapa Muni speaks about without going into the purpose, but we know what he is saying. So, text 5 again. O my wife, who are very much attached to household life, if the principles of religion, economic development, satisfaction of the sense are properly followed in household life, one's activities are as good as those of a transcendentalist. I wonder whether there have been discrepancies in following these principles. I wonder whether because of being too attached to the members of your family, you fail to properly receive uninvited guests. Yeah, uninvited guests. That is, yeah. Aditya, guests will come without invitation. And you fail to properly receive an uninvited guest who therefore were not welcomed and went away. homes from which guests go away without having been received even with an offering of a little water are like those holes in the field which are the homes of jackals. O chaste and auspicious woman, when I left home for other places, were you in so much anxiety that you did not offer oblations of ghee into the fire? By worshipping the fire in the Brahmins, her household can achieve the desired goal of residing in the higher planets. For the sacrificial fire in the Brahmins are to be considered the mouth of Lord Vishnu, who is the super soul of the demigods. O great-minded lady, are your sons faring well? Seeing your withered face, I can perceive that your mind is not tranquil. How is this so? So this is how the words of Kashyapa Muni. He sensed that there was something inauspicious going on here. There was moroseness and unhappiness. He could feel that. And it seemed that there must be some fault and he was thinking the greatest goal of inauspiciousness is if an unexpected guest comes to the house and is not received well, that is a cause of great inauspiciousness. And he says then, one's home becomes like the home of jackals, they live in the fields in holes, and that are their houses. So people who do not receive guests properly are compared to jackals. Be careful with that creates a source of inauspiciousness. So he was asking, did you perform the religious principles properly? Have you not treated a guest properly? Did you not offer oblations in the sacrificial fire properly? Because in the Vedic system, the householder must maintain the fire in the house and do chakyas every day. And he looked at her face, and the face indicates the mind that, yes, he was very worried. Of course, Aditi will say, yes, I've been following all the principles of religion. There were no invited guests, and yes, but then she will tell him after he spoke the reason her sons have been thrown out of heaven. And she will beg her husband, please give me a blessing, that they bless them, that they can regain their position. And then he will explain the Payavrata process of worship. Payavrata, only drinking milk. Anyway, there are more. It's a whole process. It's a process of devotional service which has to follow very, very strictly, and she will perform it very well. Yes.
Payavrata worship, Maharaj, they will mean nothing else.
Please.
Payavrata worship means that they will be calling me.
That's one aspect. There are so many rules. It's worship of the deity.
Who followed it? Like Diti followed it?
Diti followed it.
Yeah,
She
washed her legs also before going to bed.
Yeah, so many things. He gives a lot of rules, but he gives, Kashyapa Muni gives just the process of devotional service, which we follow in all our temples, our deity worship. That's what we do. That's what he explained, and she followed it very nicely. Yes, anything else? Yes, please.
Kashyapa Muni, being in trance, was not aware at all of how
Yeah.
his demigod and demons.
Yeah.
That's being ecstatic strength.
Yeah. Yeah, that ecstatic trance is explained in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Sixth chapter. Krishna, Krishna. Yes, here. This state is characterized by perception of the Supreme Being in a pure mental state, and it's very joyful that with purified senses is completely immersed in the greatest transcendental happiness. That, in that state, one sees the truth and nothing else. One is undisturbed during that time and is free from all material suffering. Yeah, it's in French, translated. So that's the state he was in, completely aloof, emerged in transcendence, like Samika Rishi, when Parikshit Maharaj entered his hermitage, he was also in that state, completely immersed in transcendence.
Thank you so much for that. I have two questions. So first question is like from the translation of this word, like fifth word. So here it mentioned like if the principles of religion, economic development, and satisfaction of the senses are properly followed in household life, one's activities are as good as those of transcendentalists. How it can be? Like my question is like even they follow the dharma, artha, kama, moksha, but if they don't do devotional service, how they can become as good as transcendentalists? And what is the meaning of transcendentalist?
Properly following first dharma. How do we follow properly the religious principles? Dharma is described in Bhagavad Gita. The highest dharma or occupational duty for mankind is unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead outside, and it is performed with two qualities, continuously and without interruption and without any other motive than to please the Supreme Lord, and that gives pleasure to the heart. Thus the proper dharma, proper economic development, but whatever you have, you offer to the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, it's sinful. And then you can satisfy your senses after pleasing the Supreme Lord. So it's the proper execution of Dharma, Karma, and Moksha is achieved by performing devotional service. It's a secondary effect. That will all be the economic development and satisfaction of the senses. That's ultimately followed. And properly followed in household life. Anyway, that's the real Dharma, the Karma Moksha. But the problem with Srila Vyasadeva is he disconnected it with devotional service. And then it becomes poisonous because it's for sense gratification. Yeah. The motive is different.
Because if they follow the Vedas, like not devotions, like not Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, like all the other Vedas. They are like more in this dharma, the kam, moksha, but it's like more Sanskrit.
Not really,
Not really.
because the goal of the Rig Veda, Dharma Veda, Sama Veda, Jaya Veda is to please Vishnu. So that it's there. But so Vyasadeva, technically, he explained it rightly, but he did not emphasize the devotional service, and therefore people were not really following it. They were doing it for Sanskrit. But technically it's there, because Sukracharya, technically he did the fire sacrifices to get piety, and he worshipped Vishnu, but not with devotion, in an official way.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's a problem. So technically it's there, but nobody is really interested in satisfying Vishnu. No, we do that to get
Material benediction.
yeah. And that's therefore he said that the regulative principles, if you offer the sacrifice, they reproduce Vishnu. This Vishnu pleased. Because an unattended guest must be treated, it's in the scriptures, like when we see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the same thing, it's Krishna, it's the Supreme Lord pleased. Did you follow the regulative principle?
So what is the meaning of transcendental? It's my understanding, maybe you can correct me. So transcendental means like he is above the modes of material nature. Is it correct or not? Or correct?
You have three kinds of transcendentalists. They are all above the modes of nature. It's those who are, it's explained, Vedanta Vidas Tatpanjana Advayam Ramiti Paramatmiti Bhagavan Iti Sapyate. The Vedantists, the wise men, concluded that there are three aspects of the Absolute: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and they are all the Absolute Truth, all transcendental. But the qualities of the Absolute Truth are only fully realized in the Bhagavan feature. So these jnanis, these yogis, and the bhaktas, they are all transcendentalists. But if they reach perfection, but the bhakta realizes Bhagavan, which includes Paramatma and Brahman, and the yogi realizes Paramatma, which includes Brahman, and those who realize Brahman, they just Brahman. But you need the highest realization to go back to the spiritual world. You cannot go back to the spiritual world just with Paramatma and Brahman realization.
So that means, Maharaj, like when you are in the realize like Bhagavan, that means like you're above the modes of material nature.
Yeah.
And when you are realize only Brahman, it's like which mode of material nature you have?
No, not. You are transcendent.
Oh, in the Brahman also.
In the Brahman, but it's rarely achieved. Brahman realization is also transcendental, but you stay in the material world. That's the problem. So in the 14th chapter it says, Mams yoga vicharina bhakti-yoga sivte sartan samatichita brahmavaya kalpate. So when one practices unavoidable devotional service, just with the motive to please Krishna, and always, one immediately transcends the modes of nature. Immediately, Krishna says that, then in the next verse it says, Brahmano ipatishtamim, I am the source of Brahman, which is the source of transcendental happiness. And Kashyapa Muni he was absorbed in Brahman realization. He was at least at that level, if not higher. But even in the Brahman realization, you realize this bliss. But he said the bliss experienced by devotional service cannot be compared with Brahman. Brahman is like a drop, and devotional service is like an ocean of happiness. That's the difference. Anything else? I think yes.
Thinking about this bliss, like should we strive to experience this transcendental bliss?
No, the question is, should we strive for attaining this transcendental bliss? It would be nice to attain, right? But as devotees, we should strive to please Krishna and forget about ourselves and forget about becoming happy and so on. Make Krishna happy. And then when we make Krishna happy, automatically we become blissful. It's a side effect, but it should not be our goal. Our goal should be to make Krishna happy. Okay, thank you.
It's a big question, sorry. So I'm trying to follow two principles. Like one is cooperation, and second one is to see only the good qualities in the devotee and meditate on them and glorify them and not to criticize them. The first quality, cooperation, I'm okay. I'm very difficult in that. Like I'm able to cooperate with the different devotees here, and I'm taking suggestions from senior devotees before taking any step in my life or in the service. But only the problem is with seeing the good qualities, not to criticize. I have three questions in this thing. So first question is, how can we see good qualities in a pathetic situation?
In a
Pathetic situation.
pathetic situation.
See, like if something happened, like one devotee is hurt, another devotee, like in that situation, like how can we see the good qualities in those situations? It's very difficult. How I can tolerate? That is first question. And
yeah, my memory is very short, so let me answer the first question.
okay.
Yes, that Lord Shiva is a spiritual master of the spirits and all these creatures in ignorance. They have no good qualities. But if he sees one good quality, he glorifies it like anything. And good qualities are spiritual qualities. We have to learn them in Bhagavad Gita, they are described. But he does not see their bad qualities. So, because things are arranged many times such a way that also devotees must get their karma. And it's brought sometimes by devotees. But we should not be disturbed by that and not see these bad qualities. Just don't think nothing about it. Unless you are in management, that's something else. But if you are not in management and you have not responsibility, it's a lesson not to be out of position. And then should keep out of it and be equal. So we must exercise that. It's not that we have to go into all issues. There are so many issues in ISKCON you can go in. You can go in all this in these controversial issues and say your opinion and so on, go into it, and your spiritual life is ruined, guaranteed. Don't do it. That's my advice. Stay out of it, become equal, and become the observer. But whatever good qualities you see.
Second question is like, I am trying to fix the things, but things are falling apart. Is it okay to do it or like stay away and do only what service, whatever service you are given and whatever sadhana you are doing, like just stay away all the things and just focus on your sadhana service.
Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that if we want to practice yoga, then we must be equal in success and failure. So try to do your service the best as you can. Understand, I'm not
You do
the doer, yeah.
I'm not the doer.
Not the doer, Bhakti Maharaj. So we are not the doer. So we should always be conscious of that. That does not mean if the result is not good, that you should not improve. You should do your best to improve. Yeah. Because you are also the doer, but the secondary doer. And then there's cooperation.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
So third question, Maharaj, like in this situation, like I explained different situation. So in this situation, how we can keep the spirit of Prabhupada mission? Because this is not our mission. This is not my mission. This is the mission of Prabhupada, like Prabhupada mission, like to spread this movement and to spread the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So how we can keep that spirit? Like it's not like I am doing the things alone. I don't want that. I want everyone should be together. So how we can keep that spirit?
You should make Shilva's mission your mission also. It's your mission also. But yes, we should make strategies to improve and discuss. That's important. On an individual level, and the leadership has also to make strategies together and see and discuss how we can go forward. And that cooperation will do wonderful things.
Yeah, I really observed in myself, like when we cooperate and make decision together, it's good. Like the results of that benefit is very nice. Like when you're doing alone, the result is not that much effective.
Right. Good. Thank you very much. Chandra Shriman Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
His Holiness Bhakti Prabhupada Maharaj ki.